All right, I'm joined by our senior news editor, Jessy Carveth in Girona, Spain. Jessy, today we got you on the pod to talk about two items of business that we've got on the site right now. One is your expertly gathered, data-driven rebuttal to Amby Burfoot's highly read opinion piece wherein he suggests that it's impossibly difficult to trust the women's world record in the marathon that was set last weekend in Chicago, or 2 weekends ago in Chicago now. And we'll get into that. We'll walk through the data that you pulled together as sort of I believe you call it a plausible world record if you consider all of the data. So excited to talk about that. But first, let's nerd out a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about World Athletics nominees for the Track Athletes of the Year. They were released this week. Fans of the sport have until the end, I believe, October 28th to have their say and vote on it as well. I'm curious to hear who you're going to vote for. Are we allowed to vote? I don't even know if we're allowed to vote as journalists. But anyway.
I've voted already.
Yeah, you're like, I voted.
On their Instagram, you can.
There you go. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. We'll unpack who these people are. I think a lot of listeners and viewers on YouTube will recognize those names from a great Olympics because it's just a ton of Olympians here. Before we get into that, let's talk about life.
Yeah.
You've got some big news. So you're a pro cyclist.
Yeah.
But you've got a history of running. You're a recovering runner who's become a pro cyclist. But you just mentioned before we hit record on the pod that you have put the shoes back on and you're hitting the tarmac. You're running again.
I have indeed put my Sauconys back on. I'm a diehard Saucony girl.
Nice. Free promo.
Yeah, exactly. Sponsor me. I have started, I wouldn't say, running very slowly again because I don't know, I had kind of had the itch to run for a while, and during season it's quite hard to start something like that new just because it is really hard on the body, and when you're racing every weekend you need to avoid being sore as much as you can. But since it's base season, off season, we're kind of allowed to sit back a bit more, enjoy our time, kind of do what we want. And so I put the shoes back on, and the first 2 or 3 runs were quite rough. I felt very sore after, especially, I broke my hip and my pelvis last year, and so they were really, really feeling it after those ones. But I actually was on a run yesterday, and it was really fun, and I didn't feel terrible afterwards. So stay tuned. I told my coach, my cycling coach, he started running now. He's an ex-cyclist, and now he also runs marathons and stuff. And he's always super excited when he talks to me about running. And so I told him that in 1 year, we're going to race.
Now we're talking.
So
I like it.
Stay tuned for October 2025.
What distance are you going to go with?
3K.
Nice.
3K.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're bringing him down in distance. You ran in college, right? So
yeah, I ran cross and track, and the 3K was my favorite, so that's why I said 3K.
There you go. Your sweet spot. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to we'll track the journey. We'll every time we check in on the pod and we pull you in to talk shop, we'll have to check in on how the running is going. Are you running in did you have to dust off an old pair of Sauconys from a few, or did you went and bought yourself a new pair?
Yeah, of course I did.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
The
They're
good
really
people,
nice.
The good people at Saucony will be happy to hear that. All right.
I hope so. Like I said, sponsor me.
We will provide Saucony her mailing address. All right, let's roll right into the World Athletics Track Athletes of the Year. At first, Jessy, when you sent this my way, when you sent a screen grab of the Instagram post, I had a minor heart attack because I was like, it's all just track runners, because I didn't realize it was just track runners. I thought it was all athletes, and I was like, I can't believe this. They didn't include any marathon runners. I'm offended.
Yeah.
But we're cool. We're good. So
the
let's
out
go.
of stadia hasn't come out yet. I think that's what they call it, out of stadia.
I like any excuse to say the word stadia or stadia,
Yeah.
plural stadiums. Okay, so men's. Let's go through the men's first, then the women's. I think I find the women's group more compelling, more interesting, but I think
Yeah.
on both sides very difficult to decide who's the best. Like, I'm really
Yeah.
curious to hear your picks here. So I'll ring them off for the listeners
Okay.
and viewers at home. Uh, think back to the glory days of August 2024 when we were watching the Olympic Games in Paris, and we felt deeply enmeshed in who all of these people are, and then quickly the names fade if you don't pay attention to track on a regular basis. But we promise you, we'll give you the cheat sheet here. So Grant Holloway, 26-year-old, 110 meter, 110-meter hurdler, so a sprint hurdler from the U.S. He won the gold medal in the 110 meter hurdles in Paris and basically ran a perfect season and has been the best in the world for about 4 years now. But as I reminded myself when I was doing my homework on this one, it's an award for 2024. It's not a career award. So, okay. Letsile Tebogo, a 21-year-old from Botswana, who's sort of like a big rising young star in sprinting. He won the 200-meter gold medal in Paris and kind of stunned the world with the big win because it was such a confident win. Rewatched the video today. It was pretty rad. And he beat Noah Lyles, who was the favorite going in, right? Noah Lyles, of course, 27-year-old American, 100-meter gold medalist from Paris. The big moment, arguably the biggest event in the games, along with the women's 100-meter final. And he totally delivered and wasn't the clear favorite. And it was like the most dramatic, closest race, I think, maybe in Olympic history. It came like right down to that crazy photo finish between him and Keishane Thompson. Thompson? Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Of Jamaica. He also got a bronze dramatically in the 200-meter, his better event, and the dude had COVID. Is that like a COVID record for 200 meters? Is that do we have such a thing? Do we have like sick records? Because that was like, I mean, is it an excuse? Is it an incredible performance? We'll never know.
I don't think there's technically a sick record, but
No, I don't think so either.
yeah.
Carrying on, Jacob Ingebrigtsen, 24-year-old phenom from Norway. I'm sure by his standards and evaluations, it's a disappointing season. By everyone else's, it's jaw-dropping. He won the gold medal in the 5,000 meters, which makes him now, because he won the 1,500 meters in Tokyo, the gold medal, he is one of 3 people in history to have won a 1,500-meter gold in the Olympics and a 5,000-meter gold in the Olympics. It's just apparently really friggin' hard to do. The 2 other guys, Pavo Nurmi and Hakeem El Garouge, are perhaps 2 of the greatest runners of all time. So that's the company that guy shares. He also set a 3,000-meter world record that many thought would never be broken. It was a 28-year-old record, which I will bring up as a comp later on when we talk about that women's marathon world record, because it's an interesting comp when you think about world records. We'll get to that later. And he won a bunch of Diamond League stuff, and the guy just raced a whole bunch and ran really fearlessly. And of course, also came 4th in the 1,500-meter throwdown in the Olympics, which was probably one of the most exciting track races in a very long time. And Rai Benjamin, 27-year-old American 400-meter hurdler, won 2 gold medals in the Olympics, 400-meter hurdles, and he was a member of the 4x400-meter relay team. And he beat his nemesis, the great showman from Norway, Karsten Warholm, who has dominated that event for a long time. And they've sort of been neck and neck, so this was like a big breakthrough for him. And then last guy to be nominated is Emmanuel Wanioni, who is just 20 years old, 800-meter guy, gold medal in the Olympics, ran one of the fastest times of all time, and and he's like 1:41:14, very, very close to the world record, which is a big time world record that a lot of people thought would never be broken. And now he's sort of inching closer to that. So another exciting young guy along with Tebogo that's helping grow the sport. Okay, so there's your nominees. I feel like we're doing like the Oscars thing. It's like this is the best actor category. And Jessy comes out with the envelope and she's like, and the Academy Award goes to, and the world. Do they have a statue? I wonder if they have a little They must have some sort of like. There's got to be some
trophies.
Sort of, it's like a trophy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's right. They do this like weird party in where is it's what's that city state where all the gambling is? Monaco, where they have the World Athletics headquarters are, the tax haven of Monaco, and they have like
Monaco.
They have like a red carpet gala with all of the athletes there, and they give them a funny trophy. And I imagine like James Bond lurking in the background because it's that kind of vibe. Okay, so those are your finalists. Who do you like? Who you picking?
I've always been a big fan of Jakob Ingebrigtsen.
So I knew you were gonna say him.
I know.
Yeah.
So obviously I really want him to win just because, yeah, like I said, I am a fan. But also I think he is also just a really, really talented runner. Like he has such like a broad range of talent, like from 1,500 to 5,000. And he's also quite good in the 3,000 and set a new world record in that earlier this year as well. Just so we should mention, it's not just the Olympics they're counting. But yeah, like, and he's not afraid to race either. Like there's a lot of guys that like will race really sparingly and like kind of save themselves. But yeah, Ingebrigtsen just always goes out and races hard. He's really gutsy when he races. Like in the Olympics in the 1,500 meter, like, yeah, he came fourth, but like he made that race exciting from the get-go. He was on the front, like driving the pace for the first 3 laps. And I mean, it just didn't work out for him, but like he made it an exciting race. Like he's a gutsy runner. He's not afraid to lose. He doesn't like losing, but he's not afraid to lose either. So yeah, I'm a big Ingebrigtsen fan. So yeah.
Yeah. I think like when we're going to look back in this period and like, I don't know, get in the time machine, go ahead 10 years from now, we're going to look back and hopefully things will be very different and different in a positive way for track and field. And I think they will be, because there's a lot of change afoot right now, right? Like we've been reporting on like these like track leagues popping up, and I think there's a lot of pressure to just like professionalize all this and make this more of entertainment sports. And I think looking back, you're going to look at guys like Ingebrigtsen and you're going to be like, he was a really valuable and important person in the history of track, not only because he ran really fast and won a bunch of stuff, but he also stuck his neck out there a lot and competed a lot and created these exciting moments that pulled people in and created fans. You need guys like that. And I think that's why I think it's so close, but like, I think Noah Lyles is my pick, and I almost hate myself for picking that.
I knew you were going to say Noah Lyles.
I find Noah Lyles kind of a grating human being, but he's also a guy who's doing a similar sort of thing to Ingebrigtsen, where he's just like, he's going out of his way to try to be an entertainer and to try to attract people to track, right? And I just value that so much, and he's delivering. Like his 100-meter run, his win in Paris was absolutely electrifying, totally iconic, and also a little bit of a sneaky underdog story, because that guy on paper he's not a 100-meter runner, he's a 200-meter runner, and kind of like Usain Bolt, but like Usain Bolt's a different order of magnitude here.
I think if Noah Lyles had won the 200 in the Olympics, then I would 100% say him.
Yeah. There's some sliding doors moments here with these Olympic Games. Like I
think he left the door open with that one, I reckon.
He definitely did. And that's why it's like, for me, extremely close. And I'd be tempted to pick Ingebrigtsen on the like breadth of the season. Like we didn't even mention that Ingebrigtsen ran 3:26.73 for 1,500 meters in the Olympic season, which is the fourth fastest time in history behind Asbel Kiprop, Bernard Lagat, and Hakeem El Garouge, who has the world record. And Kiprop was popped for doping afterwards and super sketchy. And Lagat is like one of the all-time runners. And El Garouge is literally the fastest 1,500 meter runner of all time. So we are watching somebody who is going to be considered one of the great middle distance runners of all time. And perhaps that could be said for Noah Lyles as well, but we'll sort of see. But I think I like him just slightly more. But I think who's going to win is Tebogo of Botswana is going to win. Because I just feel like there's that energy, like that world athletics pomp and circumstance is getting behind this kid. Is like, we want to make this guy a star. So we're going to really like elevate that performance. And I did a rewatch of all these performances in prep for this. And it was fun to go down there. It was like fun to go down Paris memory lane and watch all these races again. And they were they were good races. Like that 200 meter race, he like totally dominated the last 40 or 50 meters. It was super exciting. Okay. So you got Ingebrigtsen. I got Noah Lyles by a lean, just as he won the 100 meters. Is there anybody we're missing here?
I mean, I think there's something to say for like Josh Kerr as well.
Yeah.
Like when I think of middle distance track runners, the two that come to my head are Ingebrigtsen and Kerr. But I still think I would pick Ingebrigtsen over Kerr. So I don't think if he was there, it wouldn't change my answer.
There should be like a frenemy or rivalry award where it's just like
they would win that.
The two of them together created so much interest. And I think poor old Cole Hawker of the U.S. who won that great 1,500 meter final in the Olympics and also set an Olympic record in the process running, I think 3:27 something. That guy's getting shafted right now, but that's okay. He's got the gold medal to keep him to build up his spirits when he sees that he's not in the little graphic on the Instagram post. Okay, so let's pivot into the women.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go through this. I'll see if I can be a little bit more succinct and brief with the women than I was with the men. But I don't think so because there's just so many accolades here. Okay, first, Beatrice Chebet, 24-year-old Kenyan, 5,000, 10,000 meter track runner. Gold medal in the 5, gold medal in the 10, ran the world record in the 10,000 meters this year. Cool little factoid about her. When she ran her world record in May at the Prefontaine Classic in Eugene, Oregon, she wasn't even supposed to be the one set up for the world record. It was Gudaf Tsige who was supposed to be the one who was going to go after the world record, and she was just in the race. And she's like, screw this. I'm setting the goddamn world record, and took it, which was cool. She, in the 5,000 meters, she had to beat Sifan Hassan, Faith Kipyegon, who was the world champ, and Gudaf Tsige, who was the world record holder in the 5,000 meters to win the gold medal. That is a killer field. And she won the Diamond League Championship in Brussels in the 5,000 meters. And she's got maybe the coolest nickname of anyone in track and field, the Smiling Assassin, which is just a great nickname. And she does have a great smile. So there you go. Okay, Faith Kipyegon, 30-year-old Kenyan, 1,500 meter superstar, also runs the 5. Gold medal in the 1,500 meters in Paris. Silver medal in the 5,000 meters, controversially, because she was disqualified at first and then was, I think, rightfully given the gold medal, or the silver medal. She has won the 1,500 meter 3 consecutive Olympics. No other athlete in history has done that. That is dominating an event, and dominating usually perhaps the most competitive event on the track historically. She set a world record in the 1,500 meters in Paris at the Diamond League event in July, ran 3:49, first person in history, I think, to get under 3:50. Also set the Olympic record, and her nickname is the Smiling Destroyer. There's something going on with smiling. I don't know. Just noted that, and I was like, gotta add that in. Next, we got Gabby Thomas, 27-year-old American, 200-meter runner. Huge breakout year this year. I think she benefited hugely from being a walk-away star from the Sprint Season 1 docuseries,
totally.
and I presume she'll be heavily featured in Season 2, which is forthcoming in November. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. She won gold in the 200 meters and also 4x100 meter relay gold, which I'd forgotten about, and a 4x400 meter relay, which is kind of amazing. I will note, to her detriment, unfortunately, that 200 meter final was cleared of a lot of the top runners in the world for various reasons. No Elaine Thompson-Herah, no Sha'Carri Richardson, no Mary Jose Talu-Smith, no Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price running in that final. But she did have to contend with the next person, Julian Alfred, 23-year-old from St. Lucia. I think we all know her now. She's sort of become a celebrity or a superstar outside of the nerdy track world. And she was an incredible sort of breakout success story at the Olympics when won the 100-meter final really decisively, one of the great runs of the Olympics, and also grabbed the silver medal in the 200 meters, showing her ability to scale up and scale down. And she also won a 60-meter indoor gold medal in the Indoor World Championships in Scotland earlier this year. Sydney McLaughlin Laveron, 25-year-old American 400-meter hurdler, greatest hurdler of all time, 400-meter hurdler of all time, broke her own world record and set 2 world records this year, including in the Olympic final where she won the gold medal. She has run the 2 of the fastest, because of the world record breaking, she's run 2 of the fastest times in history in 2024, and 7 out of 10 of the fastest times at the discipline are hers. The other 3 are her main competitor, Femke Bol of the Netherlands, who I know you love. She also won a 4x4 100-meter relay gold medal as well. And notably, she signed with the Grand Slam Track League for 2025. So she's a bit of a trailblazer as well. She's somebody who's been pretty outspoken. She's thinking about the future. She's thinking about the big picture. So, I mean, she's just incredible. And last but not least, Marielity Polino, who is a 27-year-old from the Dominican Republic, who won the gold medal in the 400 meters and set an Olympic and area record. So like North and South America, North, Central America, and the Caribbean, I believe, area record at the distance, 48:17. And she's 6th fastest all time. And I'll tell you right now, if you go down the list of the fastest 400 meters in women's 400 meters in history, it's a whole bunch of dopers in her. So, so her 6th fastest of all time probably could be upgraded to something better than that if you really stared at it for a while. Okay, so let's get out the card. Drum roll, please. And who is your winner of the Women's World Athletics Track Athlete of the Year?
For me, it was close, but I went with Beatrice Chebet.
Did you really? Okay, cool.
What were you expecting?
No, I don't know what I was expecting, but okay. I like it.
Yeah, I was. For me, it was really close between her and Kipyegon, just because like Kipyegon's been so dominant. But I think Chebet, like in the 5K and the 10K, like on the track at the Olympics, like those fields were so deep, and yeah, it was just mind blowing. And to also set the world record in the 10,000 meter, yeah, I think she's just so versatile as well. And I think like nowadays, especially like being an athlete and being good at more than one event is such a huge plus. Like, and I think maybe that's like part of why I also chose Ingebrigtsen, was because like he's just so dominant at so many events, and I think she is as well. So yeah.
She's just 24 years old. I was so surprised to see she's only 24 years old.
Yeah, she's super young, so bright future ahead of her for sure.
I'm going with Sydney McLaughlin. I think,
I knew that. I also knew that one was coming, Michael.
like,
Predictable.
she's a love-or-hate type character in just in track and field, which I think is great because again, we need characters, right? I love how outspoken she is. I like how forward-thinking she is. I kind of like how she races. I love how she races. And she's kind of in a situation where she's both competing with another all-time great in the event. Femke Bol is like literally it's like the two of them are all-timers at the 400-meter hurdles, right? They're like, it's kind of crazy that we're getting this rivalry between the two of them. And yet she is so dominant at this event. I know I don't like World Athletics points evaluations because they make no frigging sense and I don't entirely understand them. I'd like to know more about how the math works. You and I, we'll get into this when we talk about the controversial women's world record in the marathon in a couple seconds. But Sydney McLaughlin's 400-meter hurdle world record is scored at 1,322 points, which is just far and away. Like, it's just like she's doing something else. She's performing at a much higher level than a lot of these athletes are performing right now. So that's who I go with. My personal favorite would probably be, I would be with you. I like Beatrice Chubet. I like the way she races. I like watching her race. I like that she tends to race quite a bit, which is also fun. And she's competing against like total sluggers and she's just crushing them all, which is cool. Is anybody we're missing here?
I have two that I'm missing, and I'm thinking about it, and I might come across as a bit of favoritism, but I think we're missing Femke Bol. As you've said, I'm just a massive fan. I love Femke Bol. I love the Netherlands, so yeah, love the Dutchies. So, and I love her personality, and I love the way she races. So I'd love to see her here, but I can also understand the other nominees, if that makes sense. And then I think the other one that like we're missing, but I think she's going to be included in the out of stadia, and that's why she's missing, is Sifan Hassan, another Dutch woman. So
she's going to find her way. Yeah.
So
she had a pretty good performance this year that I think.
I think that's why like she will be in the out of stadia, and that's why she's not in this one. But yeah, I also love the Netherlands and love the Dutch runners. I think they're awesome to watch. So yeah.
Next time we're all potting together with Alex and Katelyn as well. You got to get Alex. You got to just ask Alex to do his Femke Bol impersonation.
Oh my gosh, she's so sweet though.
He sent me a voice note during the Olympics where he impersonated her, and I thought Femke Bol had left me a voice note, but
I think we should get Alex to just speak Dutch.
That would be interesting. He does it in the Dutch accent too, and it was pretty convincing.
Okay.
All right. I agree with you. And yeah, I think that Sifan Hassan is going to find her way into the out of stadia nominations, which will be coming soon. And I'm sure we'll nerd out about those when we get those. Okay. So let's spin into the next thing. The real reason why I brought you here, Jessy, is I wanted to talk about this piece that you wrote, which I thought was very intelligently written. I think it's necessary. I think it's not only fair. I think it's a valid and worthwhile bit of detail to bring forward to our audience, because we've obviously been pretty critical and questioning and unpacking in a lot of detail this world record that was set at the Chicago Marathon by Ruth Chepngetich of 2:09:56. And we talked at length about it with Ambi. You were on that pod. And I think that he made a lot of good points. And I, too, am sadly cynical about all this stuff and have a tough time believing and trusting in this stuff. But your points here are getting me kind of thinking, like, are we going to look back in the future and think differently about this and not be as cynical about it down the line? I hope so. But let's go through it a little bit here. Okay, so first of all, the piece is on the site. It's called Here's Why Ruth Chepngetich's World Record is Completely Plausible, a Data-Driven Analysis. All right. Let's get into it. Let's go over the main
Okay.
arguments you put forth here. So first,
Okay.
you broke down her progression. Let's talk a little bit about her progression as an athlete.
Yeah. I mean, I mainly use those just to show that like she has improved over time to begin with. Like in 20, so there, yeah, if you look on the article, I have a table with each year and the best that she ran in that year. So like, for example, in like 2017, she started at a 2:22:36, and then in 2022, that's when she ran her pre-world record personal best of 2:14:18. So like she has improved over time. So she's not just going from like, for example, a 2:22 to a 2:09. Like yes, a 2:14 to a 2:09:56 is like a big jump, but yeah, like she has improved. And then I also just put her half marathons because a lot of people were talking about like her half marathon, and I read a lot online that people were like, oh, like she set a half marathon PB in the marathon, and it's like no she didn't. Her half marathon PB is actually 1:04:02, which she set in 2021, so she has run that fast before. But yeah, so I had just put those there just because I think they were a good reference point and just like, yeah, a good timeline to look at her progression through both distances, because a lot of people did talk about her half marathon within the marathon, so I thought it was only fair to reference both.
Yeah, and I should say that I think her reputation, because she has, she's been racing for a long time, and she has a reputation, and her reputation has been historically that she was a very good half marathon runner.
Yeah.
Running some of the best half marathon times in history, and that she was also a very good marathon runner, but a very uneven marathon runner that took a lot of risks. And I also think it's
Yeah.
fair to say that when you look at marathon progression, the pros only have like 2 kicks at the can each year rather, to make a mark. And some races just kind of go poorly, right? Like some races don't go
Yeah.
the way you want them to. In 2021, when she ran 2:22:31, like, I'm, that there's a lot of factors that come into play there: heat, pacing, going for the win versus going for a time, all these sorts of factors, right? She had a tough
Yeah.
go in London, and like the time wasn't great there either. Like that sort of thing it's not like a track career where you can take dozens of performances, many performances each season, and sort of they're all kind of really closely aligned, because like when things fall apart in a 1,500 meter, like whatever, you lose a couple of seconds a second, it's not a big difference. But in a marathon, you can lose minutes very quickly in the second half of the marathon, right? So
And that's the thing too, is like she is known for being a really risky marathon runner, I guess we'll call it. Like she is renowned for going out very, very fast and just kind of falling apart in the second half. And I mean, I guess kudos to her too, because if you want the big reward, you have to take the big risks. So yeah, I guess that's also something to consider, is that like if you're going to take those big risks, a lot of the times it's not going to work out.
yeah.
And then one day maybe it is going to work out, and it seemed to have worked out for her.
It did. Yes, it did work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I think the real sort of like crux of your argument here is around pacing, and that was
Yeah.
something that I thought was really cool that you honed in on this, because pacing, the pacing duties, the effect, the positive effect of having successful, really good quality pacing. There's been some research on it, and also it's clearly a huge positive, and it's also something that she was missing in that previous very fast time in Chicago she ran, where she faded quite a bit in the second half. So like, tell me a little bit about the study you looked at around pacing.
I mean, yeah, so pacing I kind of thought about right away, because like I'm a cyclist and I know that like drafting and pacing, I guess we can call it, plays a big role in my sport. And I had heard about it a bit in running as well, and so I wanted to do a bit more research on it in the running perspective, because I know that runners obviously aren't going as fast as cyclists, so I know that it's going to have less of an effect, but I thought at the same time it would also still have quite a big effect. And it turns out, like especially for elite marathoners, it does have quite a big effect. So I mean, to kind of like put it in a short, sweet way, like for a runner going at about a 2-hour marathon pace, they're gonna save 6% per 1% of body mass, which might not make a lot of sense. But in a time perspective, a runner of like 52 kilos, that's the example that they used in the study, running a 2-hour marathon pace. So as you might be able to tell, this was based on Eliud Kipchoge.
Right.
Would save between 3 minutes and 42 seconds and 5 minutes and 29 seconds over the course of a marathon. So that's quite huge. Significant.
Yeah.
And especially at the elite level, when every percent matters. Like every little thing you do at the elite level matters. Like for us, like normies, it's not gonna help that much. Like 1% isn't gonna be the make or break for us. But for these elite runners where every second counts, that's massive. And so obviously, like, I didn't have the capability to do the math that they did or the study that they did, but I was like, okay, let's take 3 minutes off her 2:14 time. That already easily puts her at a 2:11 marathon. Yeah, 2:11. I had to do the math in my head quickly. Yeah, 2:11. I had written it, but I was like, did I do that right? Yeah, a 2:11 marathon. And that's taking like quite a low end of it. And the thing with her pacing strategy in 2024 compared to the Chicago 2022, where she ran her personal best before the world record, was this year at the Chicago Marathon, she had 2 pacers, 2 people that she trains with. They were her own personal pacers, people that she trains with, and they stayed with her the entire race, barring the last like 100 meters where she got her moment at the finish line and whatnot. But that's like almost unheard of in marathon racing. Like we saw it with when Eliud Kipchoge did his sub 2, like, but that was a whole big experiment type thing, event. But this, like, usually your pacer drops out like anywhere like from 15K to 30K, and like you usually have to do around, give or take, half the race yourself, so you're breaking the wind yourself, you're setting the pace yourself, which not only could be physically taxing if you're not doing a great job at that, but also mentally taxing. And so that was my next point with the benefit of pacing, is it's not just physiological, it's also psychological. So there's been countless studies that when you're with people, especially in a competitive environment, you perform better. So her being with 2 pacers, 2 people that she consistently trains with, sitting on their heels the entire race, like that psychologically not only takes her mind off of having to set the pace so she can just focus on the running herself, but it drives that competitive edge. Because I even think about it myself, like when I'm riding with people, like on a group ride or in a race, like I'm much more willing to push myself that much harder, because I'm like, I don't want to get dropped. Like I don't want to like lose the wheel of these people. And so I reckon we've all experienced something like that, where when we're in a competitive environment with other people, like we push ourselves a lot more. So those were like the 2 really big things that I think people may not have considered right away, or but I do think they definitely played a significant effect on her race. And of course it's not something that we'll probably ever really be able to like firmly put a number on, like this is how much time she saved, but I don't think it's something we should discount either. So
yeah, and I think it's huge that the 2 guys that were pacing her are 2 people that she trains with side by side on a regular basis. As you noted in a previous podcast, she's self-coached and runs, I think, pretty much entirely only with men, and these 2 guys are 2 of her training partners. So there's that reassurance, there's that confidence and that calm of being with people that you train with, running paces you've run before together as a group. And also just like the strategy of how they were placing themselves, because it was a little blustery out there in Chicago, and how they were placing themselves to kind of protect her from the wind and get her right in that sort of like in that sweet spot, in that pocket. And I think, maybe we'll look back in a few years and realize that for many, many years, this whole idea of like the pacer gets you to 30K or 20 miles or even 35K and then pulls off and sort of slingshots you out and you're on your own. If you're going purely for time, you got to go and do the the breaking to Kipchoge chevron thing. You have to sort of like lean into all of these little details that add up to minutes if you add them all together.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I said, at the elite level, like all of these little things matter. Like it's the marginal gains, and like it's been proven in multiple sports, in multiple instances, that marginal gains do add up. So.
And so two more things. One, the question mark around shoes, right?
Yeah. So this is one that, like, there was no study that directly compared the two shoes that she was wearing in 2024 and in 2022. But, like, generally there has been really big advances in shoe technology, especially recently with, like, the Alpha Fly 3. So what it looked like she was wearing was the Alpha Fly 3, but on the World Athletics approved shoe list, Nike also has 3 other road shoes in development. So it's possible she could have also been wearing one of those shoes that maybe have features we don't really know about yet. But I just compared it to the knowledge that we did have available of the Alpha Fly 3, because I guess that's the minimum she would have been wearing. And you've even said it yourself before the show, like you've worn both shoes. I haven't, so I can't speak from experience, but you said you've even worn both and you noticed a massive difference. So,
yes.
Yeah,
there's a marked difference between the Vaporfly 2 and 3 and the Alpha Fly 3 in terms of just like the Alpha Fly 3. Like I equate it to like when I first started wearing super shoes back in the very beginning of the 2017, I got myself a pair of the very first 4% that came out, and I was able to test them like right away. And I was like appalled by the difference, by how like just how much of a leap forward in technology they were. And they are cheating. They are a form of cheating. They give you an advantage. And I kind of felt like with the Vaporfly 2 and the Vaporfly, even the current Vaporfly 3, it feels like a little bit more of a mass market shoe, a little bit more of a mass produced shoe. I just feel like I know it's the Zoom X foam, a similar foam or the same foam that's in the Alpha Fly, but it's tuned differently. It's a firmer shoe. I just feel it doesn't have as much of a pop, a kick. It's not as springy and spongy and bouncy and insane. The Vaporfly 3, which I wore running Chicago, feels different. It feels elevated. And I don't think, in just my nerding out on shoes and going down like weird Instagram rabbit holes and reading way too many subreddits on shoes, I don't think the 3 development models of the Vaporfly 3 variant that have been approved.
Alpha
Fly 3. Thank you. The Alpha Fly 3 variant that she may have been wearing are wildly different, but there seems to be a slightly different variation, and that could just be the plate placement or the tuning of the midsole of the material. Something. I know Jakob Ingebrigtsen ran a half. He didn't do terribly well in the half in Copenhagen at the end of the season, but he was seen wearing a different version of the Alpha Fly 3 that was obviously one of these development versions. So yeah, there could be just a little tiny, little baby advantage there, right? And we should also say that the Alpha Fly 3 set the men's world record last year on Kelvin Kiptum's feet as well. So it's a good shoe. It's a fast shoe, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like I've said multiple times already, at that level, every percent matters. So even getting that marginal gain is going to help her and take away a few seconds. And then the last argument that I kind of had was around the peak age. So a lot of the things that I had read about her record kind of criticized, like, oh, she's too old to be running these times in the marathon. But what a lot of people don't realize is, if you do a bit of reading, is that female marathoners actually peak between the age of 30 and 35, and it's average found to be 31. Of course, there's going to be like variation from person to person because we're all different. But generally, it's been studied that women marathoners will hit their peak between the age of 30 and 35, which is much older than men, which hit around 27. So yeah, like she's 30, she's in her prime. She's going to be the best marathoner that she's going to be right now. And she set the world record doing that. So I just think that's another little thing that people some people tried to almost use it against her, that she's too old, but realistically it actually put her at an advantage, likely. So
yeah, that's a great point. The final thing I will bring up, and I don't mean to sort of produce a counter narrative at the end here, but I did kind of get interested in, like we mentioned before, we teased off the top the World Athletics point system. They have a statistician that has figured out a way to cross compare different disciplines within athletics on I don't know what the max number of points are. Who knows? Probably isn't a max number. But it's a sort of a point system that puts elite athletes in the kind of 1,200-ish range for like superlative performances. And I went through the women's world records, like 100 meters FloJo, 1314, 200 meters FloJo, 1308, 400 meters, a doped East German athlete from the 80s, Koch or Koch is her pronunciation, East German, 1304. 800 meters was also doped, 1286. 1500 meters, Faith Kipyegon, 1295. 5,000 meters, Sige, 1282. 10,000 meters, 1309 by Chepngetich. The half is a 102.52 by Gide a couple of years ago, which seems so fast, but it only scored a 1281. And then Chepngetich's world record is a 1339, which is massive and way higher than the rest of these here. But all that to say, you look at all the world records, men's and women's, and she's only ranked 8th all time in terms of performances. Bolt's 200 and 200 meter records are in the 1350s. So there's an argument to be made that just like, women's running, women's track and field is on the rise, and that some of these performances and world records are going to come above 1300, and we're just starting to become more sophisticated about how we do this, and maybe we're still a little bit in the dark ages when it comes to how we approach the sports science end of marathon running, right?
Totally.
That's my eloquent way of walking back, pointing out all those scores that were just quite a bit lower than Chepngetich's. But your piece is awesome, Jessy. If you've not read it, absolutely do yourself a favor. We'll put it in the show notes so that you can find it very easily. It's called Here's Why Ruth Chepngetich's World Record is Completely Plausible, a data-driven analysis. Runner Jessy Carveth.
Slow down there. Slow runner.
All right.
Cyclist.
I appreciate your time. I thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to do this again regularly. We'll talk soon. We got New York coming up next. Not this weekend, next weekend, New York City Marathon. We're going to do a preview show. We're going to be busy.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye.
All right. I'm joined by my colleagues, my goal race finishers. Let's start off with Katelyn Tocci, 12th overall at the Kodiak UTMB 50K Ultra in California. Alex Sear, 3rd overall at the TCS Toronto Half Marathon. And I'm your host, Michael Doyle, 1,052nd finisher of the Chicago Marathon. Guys, we did it.
We did it.
We crossed the finish line. We have done our goal races for the season.
They told me this would be an elite only podcast.
Hey, come on now.
Katelyn, they tell you this too?
I didn't get the memo. I guess he didn't. I guess he didn't get the memo.
How long are we going
to
do? What?
Yeah. I need to age grade this time, guys. Okay, we're gonna talk about each of our performances. Let's just get right into it. This will be the focus of this segment. I just chatted with our colleague and teammate, Jessy Carveth, our news editor, about World Athletics Track Athletes of the Year, and a really great data-driven piece that she wrote on the women's world record that, argues that it's actually maybe pretty plausible. And at the end, I'd like to get your takes on that. I want to know who you guys have as your track athletes of the year in particular, because we've just talked so much about it in this Olympic season. So we'll get at that at the end, but let's go through the goal. Let's do the debrief. So, Katelyn, you're first up here. So you ran the big show. You ran an ultra, a UTMB event, so a fancy event.
Oh yeah.
You ran the longest of all three of us. and you did pretty darn good. How did you feel about it? Like, what's we're gonna do? Let's do positive takeaways,
Okay.
observations, and then some self-critical analyses that we feel like might be helpful to our listeners and viewers on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, I've always got those. I've got all three. So let's see. So the race was very cool. We were worried, remember, and I don't know if you guys remember, but the last podcast we had, I was concerned because of the fires in California. They were thinking of canceling the race, right? So we were worried about that. They had to reroute the race, which was fine. Like, I didn't know the original route. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
they rerouted your race.
Rerouted the race. I think the initial one said that it was actually going to be 45K. This one was 5K, a little less elevation gain. So everything was kind of shuffled around a little bit. They rerouted everything. The logistics changed at the last minute, but I don't think it really affected anyone because since we didn't know the route to begin with, there wasn't any, big surprise because everything was going to be a surprise. So it was rerouted. The race was very fun and it was very runnable. Which is, which is a very fun thing to say for trail races because sometimes you can get, you can run a trail race with just so much elevation gain. And in Costa Rica, we're so used to climbing. So this was like, hey, Katelyn, run, girl. Like, I was like, oh, maybe there's a hill coming where I could take this gel that I could walk. No, keep running, Katelyn. So it was actually great because it was a great challenge for me because I feel like my strength is climbing. Either, running hills or like power hiking really steep hills and the downhills. I really love to pound downhills. And this was just like, you got to keep going. You got to keep running at all times. So it was awesome because that was a really great challenge for me. And I was able to run a pretty quick 50K time wise, which I was psyched about. So I was excited about that with my time. My race overall, I would say one of the most positive things is that I closed the race very well. I feel like I'm a closer, don't want to say a Jakob level closer, but we kind of do the same thing at our different levels. I like to hang back a little bit. And I think this can also be to my detriment, but I'll get to that in the negative side. But it was awesome because the first 30K, I kind of took it, well, I was trying to run everything, having a grand old time, checking out Big Bear Lake, looking at the scenery, pushing. But for the last 20K, I was like, okay, I'm gonna turn up the gas. Like, I'm ready to go. And I did pass 16 runners in like the last 15K of the race. So I was
passed 16 runners in 15. There you go.
Wow. I was so psyched. So I mean, I feel like I had a really good race strategy because at the end of the race, I could really close because, they have the stats of like how many people, if you get past so it was like the first part of the race, most of the race, I just kept my spot. It was so funny. It was like where I started, I just kind of like stayed there and chugged along and didn't really get past and no one passed me and I didn't pass anyone. I stayed in my spot that whole way. And then I was able to pass 16 runners in the last chunk, which was great. And so I was really happy with my strategy and my closing. And I always try to tell my athletes, it's not like you want to leave everything in the tank, but like it's so much better to do that negative split idea than burning out and just like trying to zombie walk it to the end. So I was really happy.
Put a pin in that for when we talk about my race.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But then I can't wait to hear it. But the negative side of that was that maybe sometimes when I do this, I feel like, oh, but did I have, a little something left in the tank? Because I was telling Alex right before we jumped on that I said, I should be sorer. I should feel a little worse. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. You never know, right? But at the time, I felt like I was running as strong as I could run. And that's the most important thing. What killed me was, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Southern California.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. It's very dry.
Yeah, especially this time of year, really dry.
Wow, it was.
I noticed it not running, just like walking around and existing there, you feel it. So I can't imagine a long race in the mountains.
Right, and did you get like just from walking around like super chapped lips? I bet.
Or a sore throat. Like I got a sore throat.
Okay, thank you. That's a perfect segue. Sore throat is the understatement of the year. Like I am not the best breather, like the breathing technique when I'm running. So if I'm pushing hard, I'm doing like shallow open mouth breathing, like just pushing as hard as I can and getting through it. By about kilometer 10, or even before that, it was just chest, throat, pain, lips cracked by the end of the race. It was just like, I don't even know what was on my face. If it was blood, spit, salt, everything, ash, all in between. It was quite a scene. Yeah, not a good look. Not a good look on me.
So you're not buying those race photos, is what you're trying to tell me.
Exactly.
Or maybe you are, because it's kind of badass. That'd be a good Christmas card.
Yeah.
Or Halloween costume.
Oh, even better. Bloody lips. I'm like already there, halfway there. So,
Ultra runner Halloween costume. I like it.
I love it. That was the biggest challenge. So the first 30, I had a lot of trouble breathing with that dry air, and I was trying to figure out, like, okay, how could I have prepared for that? Because always after a race, I tell my athletes all the time, it's the most important thing to really reflect on it, and not just right after the race. That's probably the worst time to do it. It's a good idea to like take a day and take a couple of days, right? Like take a breath, walk away, and then go back and reflect on what happened. So I was trying to say, what could I have done about that? Or the altitude. I can't sleep in one of those tents or like go to the race a month before like the elites can, and sleep at altitude and all that. So that's kind of stuff that I'm going to have to deal with when I travel to race. But I thought that maybe one of my next goals should be working on my breathing technique. So I am not constantly mouth shallow breathing the entire time. Like, no, you guys.
Katelyn Tocci, mouth breather. That's unfair.
Literally, you guys would be like, that girl must have like asthma or some issue because she's breathing so loudly. But it actually does. I don't know. I've just always kind of had to breathe hard. And I watch these amazing runners, like, on my side, just like, breathing through their nose. Of course, if I'm running with someone, I try not to be so loud. I don't want them to think I'm suffering. So I could probably work on my breathing technique a little bit. That would be something nice, like, in through the nose, out through the mouth, trying to like get that when I'm giving a hard effort. And so I feel like that's something, because other than that, I don't know, like what would you guys suggest for me for that kind of like extreme weather switch? I mean, that was a tough.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. You go, Alex.
Well, I was going to say, like in Canada, we deal with our own version of weather switch just when winter comes. And for me, it's just time. Like the first few runs are brutal. Like the first few workouts in the cold, and I'm talking like below 0 Celsius here, my lungs hurt. Like I feel like pain in my lungs for like 2 or 3 workouts, and then it goes away, and then I adapt. I don't know if there's a better thing than just like to do if maybe go there early, like say if you can manage it, and then somewhat acclimatize to the new conditions. But breathing wise, I know that breathing kind of entered the zeitgeist a couple years ago with was it James Nestor, I think his name is, wrote this book called Breathe or Breath, and a lot of it is about nose breathing and the benefits of breathing through your nose as opposed to your mouth. And a lot of athletes like rallied around this thing, whereas I know there's some like breathing experts didn't realize how big the breathing community was. Turns out there's a lot of them. They came out and were like, it's kind of bullshit. Like the bigger the opening, the more air you can get through your lungs. So breathe with your mouth. So there's a lot. What I'm saying is there's probably a lot to read around that, and it doesn't seem like there's much of a conclusion around like what's the best way to breathe while you're training.
This is a good question. I am sure that on the site we have got a multitude of reporting on of studies about breathing through your nose or mouth. Yeah, Katelyn's like, yeah, I've edited those. Absolutely.
I've seen those and I'm still struggling.
Yeah. And I think like anecdotally, I just sort of remember, I don't know, it was about a decade ago. I remember reading something about breathing through your nose is more efficient. It pulls in more like oxygen. It blah, 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 blah. It goes to your brain more quickly. It oxygenates your blood more quickly and so on and so forth. So I do think about that. I do think about like, and I also noticed that when you're doing some like a highly aerobic exercise, doing that sort of like cyclical sort of breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth and getting kind of like getting everything flowing, it really helps with your overall rhythm as a runner. And it helps stave off cramping, I find as well too. So
stitches and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so are you Alex, are you a mouth breather, a nose breather?
Absolutely not. Look at me. What do you think?
You're like, I don't know. I've never actually spent any time not running next to you because I wouldn't be able to keep up. But like, I've never spent any time watching you running a race for an extended period of time late in the race. Are you someone who makes a lot of noise?
Yeah, well, I'm just joking, obviously. I was like thinking about it as Caitlin was talking, like, am I a nose breather or mouth breather?
Do I make noise when I run really hard? Or
Yeah.
I'm
Isn't it
like
weird?
insecure.
Isn't it weird? I don't know. I'll have to like pay attention to this next time I run. I think I'm a nose breather until things get hard.
Right.
Like no, I've put too many recent reels on my Instagram to say that I'm a quiet racer. This last one we had
Mm.
our video editor, videographer, Koske. Koske was at the race, and so he got some footage of me finishing, and I'm like making all kinds of weird noises. So yeah, mouth is wide open. Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason. Near the end, it's and breathe, get air in any way you can.
I
Exactly. I think that that's exactly what I was trying to do. Just like trying to get it in so it doesn't matter where. But I think that's something that I could definitely work on. Something else that I could definitely work on, and this is going to sound very silly, but I struggled at the end because the race was almost 100% single track, and I need to become a little more assertive in my passing skills.
Oh, you were being too polite.
Mm.
Excuse me, on your left, could I please? And it was tricky because, you're obviously not going to pass and, people's safety. You have to be really careful about people's safety. So obviously you're asking for permission, but they were like in the last like the last section, I probably passed also like 150 hikers that were on the single track. So that was very tricky
Oh.
because we were trying to get by a lot of hikers. And so that part was tricky. And I'm just a little on the
Ooh.
polite side to say like, can I please? So I think that, it slowed me down, but it must have slowed everyone down because we all had to pass through the same area. So, I mean, that was a struggle for absolutely everyone, but I'm not the best at, passing, and I wait a little too long, I think, because then it starts like the bottleneck starts coming behind me. And I was like, yeah, I've just got to say, sorry, could I pass? And I was very aware of other people. If they were, had wanted to pass me, like I would try to say, oh, do you want to pass? Like, no. Okay. If you want to pass, just let me know. So I think maybe being a little more assertive on the other end was something that I needed, but, just,
Yeah. So ultra etiquette, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
are you, I guess, is the implication that when you're running single track, particularly if you're, top 10 or 20 athletes in the race, is that the idea is like, if someone rolls up behind you, just give them the space to pass you?
Yeah.
Is that, because that could be a good strategy of like, no, I'm just not letting you pass. You're just going to have to like bushwhack to pass me because I'm just not going to give you the
Well,
room.
that is
Sorry,
sounds
you're
like
not taking 12th place on me. I'm holding 12th place. Throw the elbows out, the whole bit.
yeah, that sounds like a contact sport.
I
Yeah,
like it.
pretty much. So that was a little tricky. That was a challenge because here in Costa Rica, a lot of our races, they have a bit like wider trails and wider roads. So it's easier because, you can actually run with someone, next to someone. This was very like single file kind of running. And in the beginning, you were kind of trailing up in a nice single file line. So it makes it a little tricky. And I realized that that's why everyone ran off the blocks, like at the start line at like 3:30 a kilometer because they wanted to
Oh,
get in to the single track fast. So that would have been something that I might have paid a little more attention to prior. So all of these little like sneaky strategy race logistics that are a little on the, on the trying to be tricky side. But so those are just like a couple things that I think I could have worked on a little bit better. But to be honest with you guys, to share, I think the most important thing that I had mentioned in the last pod is that all of our 25 athletes from Costa Rica finished their race. I was able to get to the finish line at the time I wanted to, so I could see everyone come through the finish line. A lot of runners running their first 50Ks, first 100Ks, and 100-miler. And everyone came through in one piece within the time. It was just really awesome. So everyone was psyched with their goals. So I got to be race competitive Katelyn and then get to come in and put the coaching hat on and watch everybody come through the finish line, which was just awesome. So all in all, it was a really, really cool experience.
another duathlon of sorts, Alex. We talked about my journalism marathon running duathlon.
Hmm.
Katelyn, the running ultra, the coaching ultra
Yep.
duathlon. I love it. So,
Very
Mr.
cool.
Sear, you got on the podium this past weekend. He ran his first half marathon. Your first attempt at a distance, particularly when you're moving up in distance, is always a little nerve-wracking. I don't care how good you are. It's always got to be nerve-wracking because you're just like going into unknown territory. It's like going to space for the first time, man. Like you're what is it like? Pat, you've run 21 kilometers presumably in your life before, but like running it at the edge, you don't know what's going to happen in that last 5K.
Right.
I spoiler alert, or just like full disclosure is actually a better way of saying this, Katelyn. Alex and I got together and had a beer last night. So
Jealous.
Yeah. So I got some foresight into his experience, and let's just let him gloat for a second here. You take center stage, Alex. How did half marathon number 1 go? Have you perfected the half marathon? Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to retire now. No, I'm kidding. You know what? This was so I've had 2 days. It's because both of you did your respective events a week and a bit ago, so you've had a lot of time to reflect on it. I've had 2 days, so I think there are still tiny little glimpses of runner's high still remaining in my chemistry bloodstream, but I'm sobering up slowly, and I've come to think that this was actually the cushiest half marathon debut that I could have asked for many reasons. So I get into this. Well, first of all, it's in my hometown. Well, my current town of residence, right, or city of residence, Toronto. So there's no travel involved, no acclimation like you, Katelyn. It's here. I'm here. In fact, part of the race course is on my everyday running route. So I'm in a part of the city where many of the like eastward trails are inaccessible. I'm on the west end. Most people around here have one place to run. It's the Lakeshore path, and much of the race happens on that path. And so all of it was very familiar. To make things even cushier, the weather was perfect. We had maybe 10, 11 degrees, up to 12, 13 by the time the race finished, barely any wind. And the key for me was that the marathoners and the half marathoners in this event, the TCS Toronto half and full marathon, run together. And so I had the chance to jump on a marathon pacing group, which, if they're pacing right, they're very solid and not too variant for the first 21K, because these guys are not hurting. And I even had 2 choices for groups. There was a group going out at 2:10, a pace group going out for a 2:10 marathon, pacing who ended up being the top Canadian in the event, Justin Kent. And then there was a second group led by Canadian Olympian Ben Preisner, who was, as a pacer, who was pacing for 2:12. And in this 2:12 group is a good friend of mine, my former roommate, a guy I'd run many miles with, Lee Wasalius, and another friend who's from here that I've trained with here and there, Andrew Alexander, both doing the marathon. So I can just jump on this 2:12 group with these 3 very solid runners who are going to take me through 20 of the 21 kilometers at a metronomic pace of 66 minutes. So it's cushy as heck.
Wow, and that's awesome.
And to make things a tiny bit cushier, I'll throw this out there, and this may be a talk for another day because I'll have a separate video for this.
Yes.
But I bought some crazy ass shoes, man. I bought the Adidas, oh my God, the name butchers it. Adidas Adios Pro Evos. Okay, the carbonless, weightless, $500, supposedly one use, though that's a myth, shoes that no one can find anywhere, including myself. There was one pair left. They were 11 and a halves. I almost bought them for Michael because he's a 12 and I'm an 11. But I called him and I said, "Do I get these for me? What do I do?" And he's like, "I've done my race. I've done my race, son. My time has
take
passed.
them.
Take them and do me proud." And so
you run, leave me behind.
So I bought them. And so all of this to say that when I show up to the start line, all the conditions are perfect for me. And that produced a result that I was really happy about at first. And then
he gets greedy.
A little.
He starts thinking about it, and he starts thinking, I could have gone faster.
Oh.
I left time on the table. It was too easy. I didn't hurt enough.
When you
Exactly.
finish with energy in the tank, like I was just saying, right? Like I should be more sore. If you feel like you should be more tired or more sore, you're like, no, kicking yourself. You did. You think you could have gone faster.
I think so. My coach, John, told me two things before the race. He said, if you do this right, it'll be easy at 10K and it'll start getting hard at 15K.
Okay.
Yep.
So, as planned, things are very easy at 10K. So much that I'm very excited about it, but my pace group is still clicking off perfect kilometers. I have no reason to drop them and try to go for faster. I don't want to get greedy. I get to 15K and things are still feeling easy. And so I think, okay, at any time now, the wheels might start to fall off, but not yet. And so I'm playing patient. And then the kilometers keep clicking off until I get to 19K. And still then I tell myself, I'm okay. I'm all right. So shortly after 19K, the marathon group splinters off and we veer north to finish the half. And then I just start sprinting. And the last kilometer's all uphill. And no matter what, you're going to be tired at the end. But I closed in my fastest kilometer, I think, was my last one, despite the uphill, and told myself, yeah, I think I had more in the tank. Now, it's always easier to say that after a race. So sometimes I wonder if there's a bit of mental thing going on there. But I think the takeaway is that I'm hungry for another one. And Michael told me last night, Michael's prediction is that I'll run a second one in a few months and I'll go out hard and completely butcher it. And then a few months after that, I'll run another one and I'll smash it. So, so I'm willing to, go for the butcher and see what happens in a couple months, but I'm hungry for it. And I think that's like the most positive takeaway.
But Alex, I think that that's a really important part of learning a new distance. I think that you have to have sacrificial races. And that's really how I feel. I think that's part of it, because once you start getting more comfortable with the distance, you want to see how far you can push. And so even with some of my runners, I tell them, okay, this 21K, I said, if we want to go there and we want to see how hard you can push, you just have to accept that you might burn out, because we want to see how far you can. But you know what? Those races are great because you learn something else. So you have a takeaway of, okay, this was a little too fast. No, now I'm really starting to learn about myself, learning about my pacing, and figuring out my strategy. So I think that, some of those sacrificial races are worth it to try to figure out just how fast and just how hard you can push at this new distance.
Yeah. And also, like, if a competitor is listening to this, I don't want to come across saying, oh, I jogged it, I could have gone so much faster. We're talking maybe like I left maybe 20 seconds on the table.
Right?
Yeah,
maybe, right? Because that makes all the difference. And funny enough, I had a conversation with the winner of the half marathon, who's a friend of mine, Hudson Grimshaw Surrett. He's from the east coast of Canada, like myself, and he said the same thing. He said, I got to 18, 19K feeling really smooth, and he's also not that experienced in the half. So I think when you run your first one, either you underplay it or you overplay it. And I think, I think I certainly didn't overplay it. And I think I will have a bit more in the tank.
I think a really good takeaway for anybody, it doesn't matter how fast you are. If you're doing especially something like a half marathon, where you're starting to get into that deficit debt scenario in the second half of the race, certainly in the last, I'd say about 10 miles. I always find like 15K, I'm like, I feel really good. And then 16K, I'm like, I'm feeling awful. I feel like I'm melting. What the hell is going on here?
With 5 to go.
Exactly. And then you get to 19K and then you're like, oh, okay, I can sense the finish line. The homing beacon turns on, and then you're motivated to get it done. I think that a really good, you've actually done it the right way, and you've done it in a way that I would highly recommend to anybody who's doing a half marathon for the first time, which is like, leave a little bit on the table. It's a little bit to like motivate you to run faster the next time, but also it allows you a positive experience. It allows you to go through the sort of the whole genesis of running that race, get out to the other side feeling really good about it, feeling like you could have done a little bit better. So you're motivated and hungry to do better the next time, but also you haven't destroyed yourself or freaked yourself out over the distance, because long distance running, you can really freak yourself out. Right. So I think that was like, I think you did it the right way.
Yeah. Really well done, Alex.
Yeah. I'll add one thing too, in the things I want to improve. I think a debut, you call them sacrificial races, Katelyn. I think
It's
one thing
good.
that, sure, because there are a couple things too that if you're not experienced in the like long distance races or like big city races, there are a few things that will throw you off. That certainly threw me off. So the Toronto Marathon is not the biggest marathon in North America by any stretch of the imagination. But even that was big. On that morning, there were 20,000 people across the marathon and the half
Wow.
starting at the same time. And so I spent about 10 minutes like uncomfortably muscling my way to the elite section because I had to. Otherwise, there was no way for me to get there. A little bit of a unique situation with the half and the full in Toronto being treated a little bit differently and having access to different places. That's a whole other story. But just the idea of having to think very actively about logistics when it comes to big races was something that I wasn't really used to. And that people doing a big race in number for the first time should take into account. And the second thing I'll add is the art of picking up fuel on the course is
Mm.
not
Mm-hmm.
something that you just
Mm.
know. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I thought would be much more intuitive and easy than it ended up being. So I didn't like run with any fuel or gels, and the half marathon is split across the middle, right? Some people do and some people don't. Whereas in the marathon, the vast majority of people will have fueling. I chose not to have fueling for the half. But I did tell myself, maybe midway I'll grab one of these little cups of water as I'm running past. And so there was a water station at 12 kilometers where there were maybe 100, 200 volunteers all with a cup of water, massive water station. So I tell myself, okay, well this is the time for me to try. So I veer left and I take my hand out and I say, I'm not slowing down for this. I'm not the
What did you
stipulation is I
do?
I will not break stride. I'm just gonna grab the
Yep.
water. So
Okay.
I get there and I stick my hand out and I just miss the cup entirely. So I'm 0 for 1. I say, well, that's okay. There's a bunch more. So I keep running. I pass a bunch of waters. I don't want to be the guy to like try for like 3 different waters in a row and like throw off the person behind me. So I'm like, I'm gonna chill a bit, run for a couple strides, and try again. That's fine. So I do my few strides and then I reach out again for a second cup of water. And this time I miss the water and I push it onto the poor volunteer
Oh no.
who's good about it and gives me like a whoa, like kind of just gets soaked with water. And so then I'm embarrassed and I keep running and I say, well, I need to try again because there's no water. I didn't get any water. A few more strides, go for trial number 3. This time I pinch the cup and I grab it.
Yeah.
But my
Yeah,
but
pinching.
but my running motion just throws all the water out of the cup. And so the cup is empty before I get to bring it up to my mouth. So I throw it out. And now I feel bad because I've already taken 3 cups of water, but I tell myself, well, I need a water. I'm going for one more try. And this line is getting to be done. There's one more volunteer at the end with the cup. So now I said, it's now or never. So again, I noticed that pinching works. So I
Yep.
pinch the cup and I grab it. And same thing, the water's like jiggling and I'm losing it. So I just tell myself, no, I'm going to dump it on my head just to cool myself. That works, right? I'll dump it. So I take the cup, I I pour it over my head, and by doing the motion, I knock the glasses off my hat and drop the glasses, and the glasses are gone.
Oh yeah, because there's no way you're stopping
You
for those glasses.
No, no, no. There were gooder glasses. I love gooder glasses.
Yeah, yeah.
They were on the course. I think I heard. I think it was Andrew Alexander behind me, just chuckling at this just
just like
debacle.
you, he's just like
Gone
you idiots.
forever.
Like
Gone.
this guy has not practiced the
No,
fueling.
No, not at
that's
all.
amazing.
That's
Yeah,
funny. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So what you need to do
Mm.
is you and your partner Alexis need to set up a little table and out in front of your condo on the street on a Saturday morning. It's like a lemonade stand style
Mm-hmm.
setup, except it's just all the little Dixie cups.
Yep.
And she stands out there and she does the balancing act where she hands them to you and you just run 3-minute Ks towards her and just keep working on it. Practice, practice, practice. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually you'll get it. There is a technique. And it's like you can, I don't slow down either. I just come in at my pace. And then what I do is I pick a volunteer with a cup that I feel like looks like a experienced volunteer. So not some like high school kid who's goofing off and like not even looking at you. It's just, you pick like the adult who's like seems like they're supervising or something, and they're like, they're paying attention and they've got the cup out and they're poised to hand it to you and they're excited. It's like an athletic stance. And you're
Yes.
like, okay, that's
Okay.
my person. I point to them. I point to them and I make eye contact so that they see that I'm like, I'm coming at you.
Right.
And then I get the hand out. I keep a nice sort of like, I keep my arm sort of like at that height, but I don't, lock my elbow or whatever. I swoop in. It's almost like when you see like a fighter jet and a fueling jet, like fueling in midair, and like these military planes. I swoop in, and it's just like I time it, and I caress it. I pick the cup up gently. I don't pinch. I sort of scoop it or catch
Scoop it up.
and then immediately when I have it in my hand, I pinch the entire top closed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sealed. So it's shut.
Nice
We've talked about this.
Okay.
Yeah, in an early pod, I think Katelyn and I nerded out about this.
Yeah, we did a little
And then
bit.
I like wiggle my fingers back,
Okay.
and I get out and I exit the area. So I allow the next person behind me to come in, and I carry the little cup pinched out of the aid station area. So I'm out of the way, and I carry it with me for a minute, and then I kind of cinch my fingers back so there's a little spout opening, but the water's not splashing everywhere. And then I sip, and then I just sip. And then what I do is I do a little bird bath with my hands, and I wipe the excess water on my neck to cool my neck afterwards, and then I chuck the thing to the side. And if you're taking a gel with that, it's doubly important to make sure it's pinched so they actually have water in there to take the gel with afterwards. And you open the gel before you enter the water station.
Cool.
Oh, that's some really good.
There you go.
All right. Well, we got to try that, Alex.
There
I'm
you
also
go.
not a pro.
That's like the
Yeah,
that's the most boring social media sort of breakout clip that we could ever create there.
You managed to compare yourself running to a military jet. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
A slow, clunky, old military jet, but that nevertheless, like one of those old B-52 bombers. From the Second World War. That's me.
But that's
Okay,
something,
guys.
that's something that you need that is so different that I actually am going to take your advice as well, because I'm also pretty awkward in road running still with taking water, because in trail running, you have a strategy, but you're going into the station, and I grab the bottle beforehand when I know the aid station is coming up. I open the bottle because of course I'm carrying a vest, because you always have to carry it. It's part of the equipment. And so I do open, and sometimes like at these UTMB races, it's really nice because they actually have volunteers with pitchers of water kind of like outside the aid station. So you don't have to stop as much, but you have to stop because you're refilling at least 500 mils of water. So, you do have that couple of seconds there to stop, they refill, you got to close the bottle. And if it's a super long race and you have to refill what's in the back, that's really tricky because it's hard to get the time down so you're not wasting a lot of time in aid station. So it's just all about, like you're saying, like, prepare for it. If you got to open the gel before, open the gel before. I got to take off my backpack, my racing vest and kind of have that ready. I try to work with just bottles to be fast, but sometimes, like in that dry climate in California, it was like, 500 mil wasn't getting me 15K every time or 12K every time because it was super hot and dry. So, I had to fill it up. It takes a little time, but I'm going to use that. I like that, Michael. I'm going to try that practice that for Boston.
It's just all about this like weird momentary relationship, this kinship you develop with the person you point at that you're going to take the cup from. You're like, you're my person. You and I are inextricably linked for a moment in time, doing a really important thing for me, and I really appreciate it. And then, you knock the cup out of their hand.
Yeah, that volunteer certainly thought I was their person. Then I splashed him in the face.
Then you just Gatorade bathe them. All right. So my situation, Chicago Marathon.
Tell us everything.
Not my favorite race I've ever run, guys. Not the greatest experience. And I would have to say, mostly, almost entirely my own fault, as it is always one's personal responsibility when they don't have a good race. It all comes down to, I've had some time to think about it. I mean, like, listen, you look at the time on paper. I ran 2:47 something, and I'm a 44-and-a-half-year-old man. So that's a pretty good time. I understand that. Like, I understand there's probably a lot of people listening and watching just being like, yeah, I'll take 2:47 any day. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I would.
But it's all relative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my issue isn't so much with the time. That's fine. It's the way I experienced and ran the race, I really like running the marathon. It's like, it's a weird thing to say. It's like my favorite thing to do, I think. I have a lot of little things that I love doing. I love to read and whatever else, but like, I just love the experience, the phenomenon of being in your own mind running the last 10 kilometers of a marathon. There is nothing quite like it. It's this weird cerebral space. And when you do it right and you're attacking the last 10K of a marathon, it's just, it's the place I want to be. It feels extremely fulfilling, and it's unlike any other experience. And I just didn't get there in this race because I spent the entire race ruminating over negative thoughts and second guessing myself and feeling pretty grumbly and unhappy. And also my heart rate was like too high for the aerobic effort I was doing. It was not working out. And I battled myself the entire friggin' run.
Mm-hmm.
And my takeaways are, first of all, my positive takeaways are, personally, I'm proud of myself that I fought all those negative thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and that I identified that most of what I was experiencing was psychological, and ego driven more than it was physical.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped me get through a just brutal second half of a race where I was just like, I got to 20K and I was like, how the hell am I going to get through this? I feel like I'm like running the worst. I feel like I'm 35K in running the worst marathon I've ever run. I feel just absolutely like dog shit. So I was like, okay, literally mind over matter in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I used a couple like tried and true strategies to do that. I just broke my race down into increments,
Mm-hmm.
and that works. Like at first I was like, let's just do 5. And I was running with my closest running pal. And I was like, okay, let's just do 5 kilometer increments.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, then we're getting desperate. And I was like, we were like 20, what are we at? We're at 20 something kilometers. And I'm going to do like a kilometer breakdown where I'm like, we've only got 19 kilometers left. I was like, oh, 19 doesn't sound good.
No,
I was like, we've
a lot.
only got, and I switched to miles. Then I switched to miles. And I was like, let's do like, okay, we passed like 16 miles. And I was like, okay, let's do less than 10 miles to go. And then I was like, 9 miles to go, 8 miles to go. And I was just like, yeah, this is working. And I had a couple of rough spots, but ultimately I did okay in the end. I positive split by about, I think it was about 4 minutes and change, which I'm not proud of. And it got me to thinking about, and this is a negative or a critical, self-critical analysis is, and I said this to Alex last night over a beer, as I said, for me, the marathon isn't so much about goal time. It's about it's about knowing yourself. I think it's sort of a philosophical quest more than it's a physical quest. And I think the sort of most successful version of the marathon is when you go through an entire season training yourself, and then you get to the place where you're on the start line and you're like, I know what my half marathon split should be, so I can run an even or slightly negative split.
Mm-hmm.
And the farther further away you are from nailing that number, the less you know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, from my comfort level, pretty far away from knowing myself in that race, and that disappoints me. And I'm like, I got to tighten that up. And I have a little bit of a hot take, which is I don't think we should have marathon times. I think the leaderboard or your time should just be your differential between your first and your second half split. But
then that doesn't prevent people from walking the marathon and then winning it.
That's true. I just mean competing against yourself. And I also think that like having a big negative split also indicates that you don't know yourself terribly well, because it's like you just massively underperformed. And then that will happen if you're new to marathon running. And I'm not trying to disparage your performance. If you just ran your first marathon and you did a 15-minute negative split and ran 4.5 hours and are really proud of yourself because you just had way more in the tank than you thought you did. That's part of the process, right?
Right.
But what I mean is once you get to a place where you sort of understand the distance, you've been running for a while, you've done a few of them, I think it really should and for me, this is something that I'm going to focus on the next time I run a marathon, which will be, I will do a marathon again, I will focus on really knowing myself and knowing that number and being honest with myself on the start line and getting that half split right. And I think that that's really important. And a couple of other quick takeaways, guys. Didn't look at my watch very much because I was like, I don't want to look at my watch.
You don't want to know.
I didn't want to know. And you know what? I didn't want to know. And I think it worked well. I think it was a good thing because I ended up actually when I was suffering quite badly, I was actually moving faster than I thought I was. And I think you can develop like pace anxiety if you're staring at your watch too much and you're just fussing over details too much. Then a couple of neat gear-oriented items. I ran, so the marathon majors have a blue line, the World Marathon Majors blue line painted on the course, and that is the perfectly measured 42.195 kilometer course. You follow that blue line, you're running the exact race. In part because I was just suffering badly, I was like, I am not doing a goddamn meter more than I have to. So I just like sat on that blue line the entire time. And kudos to the people at Apple who put together the Apple Watch Ultra 2. My watch was like, it was the most accurate I've ever seen a watch perform.
Really? Wow. Okay.
All right.
I had almost exactly 42.195. It was actually weirdly slightly under. Usually you get over because you don't run the tangents properly. It was slightly under by a couple of meters, but I will also give the Apple engineers credit. About 2 hours after I ran the marathon, it gave me this little badge. It was like, you ran a marathon today.
Nice.
I was like,
Nice.
I thought they were going to punish me for not getting the full 42.195. But it was like almost exactly dead accurate. It was really impressive. I was not anticipating that. When you're running, especially a major, when there's a lot of buildings and a lot of people and a lot of other GPS units running at the same time, I've kind of like given up on really hitting exact splits. It's more like you're just using your watch almost like an old Timex stopwatch, and then you just use like the 5K splits with the clocks to figure out kind of where you're at and if you're on pace or not. In this case, should have been looking at the watch more often. It was super accurate. And then the second thing, to your point about super duper shoes, hyper shoes before, Alex, I wore the Alpha Fly 3s for the first time.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I like them. They were not part of the problem. They were part of the answer. They were trying to help me. They were trying to get me up on my feet and keep me economically efficient. I failed the Alpha Flies, guys. I failed them. I'm sorry, Alpha Fly.
We talked about this last night. It's like some of these super shoes don't let you break form.
No.
They force you up onto your toes until you yourself decide to stop. Like there's no falling back with your bum sticking out behind, falling on your heels. Some of these shoes have no heel, so you have no choice but to keep on your midfoot or your toes even.
Like
I've experienced that before.
Like those Pumas that literally have no heel, right?
No heel.
Yeah, no heel.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's like, what are you going to drop to? You're in the void. Stay on your toes. No,
if you run in those and you start falling apart and you heel strike, you just immediately collapse.
You fall.
You just
fall
fall,
back.
You fall into the asphalt.
You're just done.
Yeah.
like, sorry, you were not worthy today.
Yeah. You actually there's like a void opens up in the road and you just fall into another dimension and
You're lost
you end up
forever.
having to live a totally different life.
You're
And
lost
you
forever.
shake Usain Bolt's hand.
Yeah. Exactly. He's there to greet you as you enter a purgatory of heel striking.
The Puma Purg.
Those and with
right.
Alex's Gooders all together fell into the black
That's
hole
right,
of the,
the
road.
Gooders.
There
Yeah,
they
that's
are.
right.
Yeah.
They're with the Puma shoes underground.
Must be wearing these Gooders
Usain
now.
Bolt is wearing a stomped on pair of Gooder sunglasses, and you just enter there like,
Whoa.
what am I doing? Whoa, guys. Okay, so before we wrap up, as I said off the top, first segment I chatted with our colleague Jessy, and we talked about athletes of the year. And full disclosure to our listeners and viewers, I requested that my two colleagues here do a whole bunch of research on all of these athletes because we were all going to talk about it together, and then we decided to split the segment out. So let's just not leave that research wasted Katelyn,
Yeah.
I know you are like super hyped about this because you are all over the Olympics this year, and these are just a whole bunch of Olympians in this list.
Yeah.
Uh, let's go men's track athlete of the year. Who do you got?
Okay, for the men's track athlete, I'm going with Jakob Ingebrigtsen because look at that face. Look at that face.
Okay.
I just feel
Okay.
like it was an old world record that he broke. And I said, if you're breaking world records year after year, I mean, I think it was a 96. You can please correct me if I'm wrong.
1996, it was a 28-year-old record.
Yeah, it was a 28-year-old record. So I'm saying my criteria that I was trying to use, because I was trying to put together criteria, because you're like, okay, all of these nominees are amazing. I mean, any one of them could win Athlete of the Year. But I was really trying to think, what are my points? Like, what do I want to see? And that world record, and such an old world record, and that he beat it by so much, I feel like that was a pretty important that was a really big win for him this year. So that's why I'm choosing him. Also, I know that he didn't do his best in the 1500, but he was able to make his comeback in the 3000 in the Olympics, for all of you that watched. And so he worked his magic in the 3000. He broke the world record. So I chose Jakob Ingebrigtsen. You did not, obviously, Michael. Who did you choose?
I don't want to talk about it because I don't like my pick.
Oh, no.
What? Who's
I
your
don't
pick?
like my pick. I picked Noah Lyles.
Oh, I also don't like your pick. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We're zagging on Noah Lyles now?
Poor Noah Lyles.
Yeah. Like, I think I want to pick Jakob Ingebrigtsen because even though I think he's the perfect villain in the sport, and sports need villains, right? They need controversial characters. They need people that will rub people in one direction and create an emotion. And he's definitely that guy. I like that the guy races a lot. I like the guy's like raising the stakes all the time. I like that he likes to try and fail things. Like his half marathon in Copenhagen was a gong show, but it was awesome that he did it. Like, what a set of steel balls on that guy that he just went out and he's like, I can run a half marathon.
27-minute 10K split.
Yeah. It's like, let's go. Let's see if this can happen. And then he's like literally walking in shame halfway through the race because he's just falling apart. But I kind of love that about him. Yeah. I love that he talks the talk and then, no pun intended, walks the walk. I love that. No, but I love that, like, he in the 1500 meters, like that 1500 meters in the Olympics was like must watch racing that I think people who aren't just running nerds like us actually started to realize, because there was a bit of talk about it that permeated up into the mainstream. They're like, oh, this is an important race to watch. This is going to be exciting. These guys are really good. And he was a huge part of that. Right. And his world record's nuts.
That was amazing.
It's statistically the second best world record run in 2024, only behind Ruth Chepngetich's world record, which I want to pick your guys' brain about for 1 second at the very end. Okay. And we'll try to keep controversy free, although I don't know what Katelyn's going to say about it, but
but Michael, can I ask you though, why did you choose Noah Lyles?
Yeah, you just like pumped Jakob's tires for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I think he won the biggest race on the biggest stage. I think he wasn't necessarily the favorite, and he's not a natural 100-meter runner. Right. And then he elevated himself to that level and ran, I mean, really like a top flight time. And I think overall, and then let's not forget, he won a bronze medal in the 200 as well. He can excuse that away by COVID and blah, 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 blah. I think that in history, that's not going to be an excuse. He just says a bronze medal, which is still really good. Mm-hmm. And I think that more than anything else, he almost needs like, it's like an achievement award or like a customer service award or something that the World Athletics should give him, because he's promoting the sport in a bigger way than anybody else.
That's true.
Maybe ever has, period. Like Usain Bolt, I don't think Usain Bolt himself promoted the sport. He was just amazing and people wanted to watch him, and he has this like gigantic personality.
I don't know if that's a hot take. I think
Noah Lyles is like going out of his way to promote the sport. He's like going absolutely out of his way to promote the sport, to like hype this sport. And whether or not you find him a grating human being, he's going a long way to do great things for the sport. So it's like a hybrid reason why I'm giving him.
That's a nice reason, though. I like that. Like,
Yeah.
you guys will see my women's pick is also for a reason, not 100% medals and world records. So I understand that, like promoting the sport. And he is, because he's setting this. I mean, so many more people are interested in track now just because of his big personality and sprint. So he's doing his job.
Who you got, Alex?
See, I'm a bit more of a purist when it comes to choosing, and I try to divorce what people are doing for the sport and performances, because otherwise, why not give it to Michael Johnson, who's making his own track league? He hasn't run any 200s this year, but he's
probably
doing
still run a pretty good
sport.
one if you wanted to. Yeah,
He probably still could, but no, to me it's just performances. And Katelyn, I agree with you here. I'm giving it to Jakob.
Yeah.
The reason being, there's only one of these 6 nominees that truly deserves to be in the conversation of the GOAT of their distances.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you go through the 6, Wanyonyi, the 800-meter runner, is not the GOAT. Rudisha's the GOAT. Grant Holloway is not the hurdles GOAT. Aries Merritt is the GOAT. Tebogo and Lyles are not the GOATs. They're in the shadow of Bolt still. Rai Benjamin is not the GOAT. Warholm, I think, maybe is. He's living. He's a competitor. Jakob is at the point where you can make the argument. He blasted Coleman out of the water. He's one good race away from breaking that 1,500-meter record, which at one point sounded like it was unbeatable. He's the only one that I think deserves that title. And also, he's had a weird year. You talk about the 15 that he butchered. Well, we excused Lyles for not winning the 200. We got to excuse Jakob for not winning the 15.
Absolutely.
Totally.
And, and he came in 4th. I mean, and that was an incredible race. And he actually, as our colleague Jessy pointed out when we were talking about it, he sort of made that race. He set the table for all those guys. He's the reason why that race was the way it was, because he went after it. Right. So yes. And I think you're making a great point, Alex, which is like, also in 10 years time, I think there's a chance. I don't know how big there's a chance. There's a good sized chance that he could be also an all-time great marathon runner. And that would just put him in, like, he would just be the greatest runner of all time if he's able to run and win a couple of marathon majors to add to what he's doing right now. And he's how old is he? He's so young. He's
he's 24. I think he's a
24 years old.
Yeah.
He's 24 years old.
Wow.
Which is nuts.
Yep.
So he's still got 2 more Olympic cycles on the track if he wants.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, true.
So, yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the women. Who you got, Katelyn?
All right.
Who's your girl?
Yeah. Okay. This was very tough because my girl's in there. She had 3 Olympic gold medals. You've got world records in there. So this was actually the hardest one for me to pick. And I'm going to go absolutely against what Alex is saying because I'm not going on performance. So we're not going to have the same one. I'm going with Julian Alfred. I have to. And I understand, and I understand there's no world records there. I understand it's, the gold in the 100 meters. But like Michael said, she won on the biggest set stage. The 100 meters in the Olympics is supposed to be like the wow event. And so she got that. It was, amazing and probably sentimental for her that she brought home the first Olympic medal to St. Lucia. And I think that's and I know that it doesn't have to do with the performance, but I think it's just a really big deal. And that she's got a ton of potential to continue running. I have read, and I don't know if it's just rumors, but I read that she was going to think about training for the 400, which is just so completely different than something that she's been doing. So, and I know that she also has the 60 meter, she had the 60 meter win. So she's obviously super explosive. I'd like to see, if she is going to be even more versatile and move into the 400 meters, see how she does. But but that's what I chose. And that was your dark horse for the 100 meters. Remember, Alex? And we were all kind of like, who is she? Who is she? Well, she's this incredible, amazing gold medalist in the Olympics who I think has a lot of potential to continue. And I think she surprised the world. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sure, maybe my criteria are different, but it's not that I wouldn't have picked Alfred. Alfred was in my top 2. In fact, I didn't pick her, but I was super. I mean, listen, she was the mirror image of Lyles, kind of, right? 2 sprinting medals, including 1 gold.
Right.
Yeah. So she, to me, if she wins, I say well deserved. I mean, even regardless from the fact that where she's from, she's trailblazing over there, which means a whole lot. Whether or not World Athletics factors in these intangibles, we don't know.
Right.
But yeah, incredible year for her. I almost picked her. I went on the other side of the distance spectrum, and I went with Beatrice Chebet of
Yeah.
Kenya.
Oh, yeah. She was my
I,
second.
I just went down on like a stats thing. I went
Yep.
very objective with it. At the end of the day, Chebet had two Olympic golds, pulled
Yep.
off a double that was really hard, and that was filled with talent. Right, this was no weak year
Yep.
for women's distance running at the Olympics. You had Sifan Hassan, um, you had
Kip,
well, okay,
Kipyegon,
yes, thank
Uh-huh.
Sige,
you,
yeah.
yeah. So Chebet, two golds, a world record, first
Yeah.
woman under 29 minutes for 10K. That was huge. I didn't give it to Kipyegon because, I mean, all time she's a great, but I think her biggest crowning achievement was winning the 1500 for the third time
Yeah.
in a row, which is amazing. But again, like fit it into the year's context. That's one victory. That counts as one victory, whereas Chebet had two. So I gave it to her. Gabby Thomas was also a possibility. I do think that her pedigree, while incredibly impressive, would not have happened without having stellar relay teams to run on. She doesn't do it herself. It's a four person team to win all these golds, these medals. So no, to me at the end, I think Chebet just had the most impressive record.
I went with Sydney McLaughlin.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and the reason why is I think the world record is king or queen when you're doing these types of evaluations. And maybe I'm creating a double standard because I obviously didn't evaluate the 3,000-meter world record by Ingebrigtsen on the same level. But her 400-meter hurdle, she broke her own world record twice in an Olympic year in 2024 and set a world record winning an Olympic gold medal, which is really, really, really hard to do. It's easier to do in certain events than others. Some would argue like maybe the women's 400-meter hurdles was like a bit soft historically, and we're seeing this great golden era with her and Femke Bol, and they're sort of raising the game on each other in the process. But if you look statistically at her world record, it is a couple points in the World Athletics point system that we all love. It's a couple points higher than Ingebrigtsen's 3,000-meter record, and it's one of the great world records ever set as of right now, just based on those points at a 1,322, whatever that means for you. But it's very high. Over 1,300 is very high. And she just is an incredible athlete. Also, intangibles. I like that she speaks her mind. I like that she's taking responsibility for her place in the pantheon of the track world and using her, personality and her name recognition to try to move the sport forward a little bit, kind of like on not as intense a level as a Noah Lyles, but she signed with the Grand Slam Track League for 2025. So she's taking a risk there, which I like. She's been very outspoken about kind of the state of the game, the state of track and field. And a lot of track athletes don't do that because it's risky to do that. And because they just figure like, I bide my time, I keep my head down, I make my money, I run my records, win my medals, and then I move on. Let somebody else deal with that stuff. I'm doing just fine right now. And she's taking some responsibility for it, which I like. So, but ultimately it's about performance, as you say, Alex, and her performance was, I wanted to pick Beatrice Chebet because I personally love the way she runs, and I'm a distance guy, and she's a total dominator with the coolest nickname ever. Do you guys know her nickname?
No?
No.
Her nickname is the Smiling Assassin.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
She does smile a lot. And her 10,000 meter world record at Prefontaine Classic this year, I mentioned this with Jessy, so I'm sort of retreading for our listeners. She wasn't even supposed to be the one that was set up for the world record. It was supposed to be Sige who was teed up to run that world record. She was just like, F this. I'm taking this world record. She took it. So I love the way she runs, but you just got to go by the numbers, and McLaughlin's performance is the best, I think. So that's my pick. All right, guys. Speaking of world records, let's close this out by making Katelyn super uncomfortable. You're
Love
like,
it.
let's not talk about this, guys. I don't want to talk about this. Ruth Chepngetich's world record. It's been a week and change. We don't have to belabor the point too much, but the three of us never talked about it. We didn't. We had a pre-recorded pod going into this because all of us were racing and traveling. Thoughts, takeaways, anything to add? Anything you feel like how is this sitting now? Right? It's been a bit. There was initial surprising negative reaction against it. And the level of negativity and and we are part of it for sure. We'll take responsibility for it. And I stand by what Ambi wrote, and I stand by how we've been covering it, because I think we've been reasonable and fair. But I think there is for people who follow track and field and athletics on a close level, there has been a discomfort with where things have been and where things are going. And it just kind of felt too insane. So, but a week and a half later, I like what Jessy wrote. I liked her sort of reconsideration of it. I think that's fair. I personally don't know what to think. Alex, what do you think?
I thought about this yesterday in enough depth, and I tried this little exercise where I tried to think about this time, this record, while discarding any type of thing that would influence my thought that I perceive to be subjective.
Okay.
Okay, things like where a runner is from, and I'm not trying to make
Sure.
a racism argument. I'm trying to make an argument of like, if a runner is from a place like Russia or Kenya where there's been a lot of doping in the last few years, that raises a red flag. That's just, it's probability and it's how it is. I tried to remove that and
Yes.
just think about the time, because there have been many dopers in the last few years that are Kenyan. Doesn't mean all Kenyan athletes are dopers. You can't think that way.
Some of the doping performances haven't been very good. So
There you go.
yeah.
So I tried to remove that. I also tried to remove the idea that like a lot of the reactions, I think, around a woman running 209 could have come from like A, women who feel like they never have a chance in hell to run 209, and B, men who don't think they have a chance in hell to run 209 who are even more upset. And so I just tried to think about it without any of that emotion, and I'm still suspicious. Because if Chepngetich is an absolute outlier, a Usain Bolt of sorts, wouldn't have it happened in increments? That's just the argument, and I think Ambi would have mentioned this at some point.
Yes, he did.
He did, I guess, in length. Like, it would have happened in increments. We would have seen a 213 and a 212 and then a 210 and then a 209. Usain Bolt didn't run 9.9 for 5 years and then one day dropped a 9.58. And in comparison, a 209 might be even more impressive than a 9.58. Say Usain Bolt would have dropped a 9.4. Had that happened, people would have been incredibly suspicious. If Jakob Ingebrigtsen dropped a 322, now I'm just throwing
Sure.
numbers, I need to say,
It's
because
crazy numbers.
you
326 is the world record, in the 1500 meters, 326 flat.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
He runs 322 out of nowhere.
everyone's suspicious. If a man ran 155, which I understand is the converted equivalent, everyone would be suspicious. And so I stand by, like, I do not think that my suspicion has anything to do with the fact that it's an athlete from a country where there's been a lot of doping in the last few years. Nothing like that. I think no matter the event, no matter the person, the time, if there's that much of a difference, that has to raise a red flag. And if that person is clean, well, then I and many other people owe them an apology, because athletic freaks do exist, and sometimes there are these paradigm shifting moments. It's always possible. If you don't allow for a little bit of that wonder inside of your head, your brain, you're probably not appreciating the sport for what it can be fully. But I'm gonna be suspicious until many other people run 209, or until something happens, she gets popped.
Katelyn?
I know. You guys are probably expecting
This
my
is where Katelyn just like lays into her. She's like,
yeah, I can because
okay.
obviously.
What's your take?
Okay,
Yeah.
no, my take is, and yeah, I've been listening to everything, and that's probably also I've gone back and forth a million times, but you guys know me, and I'm obviously going to be the optimistic one, and in her favor.
That's good.
It's just the way it is. And, it's also from personal experience, which makes it a little subjective to me. It hits home because about 8 years ago, I ran a 100-kilometer race, and I came in second in general, like within the men, like the second after the first man. And I was extremely excited about my race. I felt amazing. The long distances, they're my bread and butter. That's what I really like doing. And I just have, that endurance to keep going. And then, I heard whispers saying like, oh, she probably got in a car and was taking some of the route. And I was absolutely devastated because it was like so cool that I got to the finish line and they were like, we can't even give you like a real place trophy because we only have men's and women's. We don't have general. So you're not like, I thought it was just the coolest thing in the world that I was standing up there with these two guys and saying like, hey, this was a long race. I was able to show that I could come in second place in general. And there were whispers that people thought that I couldn't do it or that I wouldn't be able to do it. And it was heartbreaking. And, people are going to talk. And I kind of feel like if she's feeling that way and she really didn't do anything, she's feeling what I felt that day, which is like, how could you doubt me if the last thing in the world that I would do would be to cheat? And so it really hit home for me because it happened to me. And, and yes, I do understand statistics are statistics. And I'm like leaning on Jessy's article and I'm leaning on the fact that, the Pacers could have made a huge difference and they could have knocked off, somewhere between 3.5 and 5.5 minutes on a time that she would have done otherwise. I'm thinking about her super shoes. Did she have something special in there, something new, some new prototype? I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt just because I want to believe that there is good in these athletes and that there are these superhumans out there doing this great work and that we don't always have to, break them down or cut them down. And if she did, then I'm going to be the one, if she did dope, I'm going to be the one putting the foot in my mouth, like, oh, how did you believe her? But I really want to give her the benefit of the doubt, having been on my level in a similar situation of people not believing my capabilities in a race.
I feel like I on the one hand, I feel like the jump is too great. Mm-hmm. That's my big issue, similar to what Alex was saying.
Right.
And then my sort of closing thoughts here on this are that maybe, and this is my hope. This is like optimistic Michael coming out here. He doesn't come out very often.
Wow.
But he's
wow.
Hey guys. I'm weakened. I'm pummeled by the Chicago Marathon. And so, I think that maybe there's a hope that, and this would be, okay, if this was the case, her team, Nike, all of her people need to come out quickly and say this is like, hey, we realized that like everyone's just been doing the marathon wrong. Like training, fueling, using our knowledge we've learned from Kipchoge's sub-2 attempts with the Pacers and putting the Pacers in a certain place, and the Pacers that she trained a lot with, and she trained with men and not women, and she was doing all these things in training that nobody had ever done before, and the new version of the Alpha Fly that the experimental Alpha Fly that we got approved that was on her foot does have this little bit of something magical that previously hasn't been used before. And there's all these factors, and it's just like we're just advancing the way marathoning is done in one race in a big way. Mm-hmm. Similar to the Breaking 2 thing back in 2017 with Kipchoge. It was like, wow, they're doing a lot of things differently, and they had this big sort of astonishing breakthrough at the time, right? Like he made a pretty good jump. I think he was like, I don't remember his exact time going into 2017, but I think he made around a 3-minute jump in the marathon.
Yeah.
That's me being hopeful, and I feel like almost perhaps a little bit naive, but maybe we're going to look back on this in 5 or 10 years and it's going to be like, it was a watershed moment. All these other women started breaking 2:10 afterwards because they realized that they need to have pacers all the way to 42 on the nose kilometers. And then the last 200 meters, they give way to let a person run and break the tape. But like, there's all these things that we need to do that we just haven't been consistently doing that we should be doing in a marathon to like maximize performance. I still feel like that's a bit of a naive argument or counter argument, but I remain a modicum of hopefulness that that's the case. So
me too.
Closing thing, Alex, what was your half marathon time?
65:58.
Ruth Chepngetich beat you by 18 seconds with her second half split in the marathon.
Yeah, her first half beat me by like a minute 40 or something.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
good to know.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm.
Okay, guys. So next week we have the New York City Marathon.
Ooh.
I will be there covering it live. We're going to do live updates as we've done with all the majors before. So come to our site. We'll send it out of the newsletter next week in advance so you know where to find it. And we'll just be be live blogging. We'll be providing live updates on the whole race. I'll be doing it from the finish line area in New York City. And we'll do a preview pod. Next Thursday's pod is going to be the New York City preview pod. We're going to talk all about the race. Going to give you everything you need to know about it, how to stream it, who to pay attention for. There will be celebrities, the whole bit. We'll talk about it all. We got you covered. And if you have not subscribed to this podcast, what are you doing? You're I mean, this is like 2 hours into talking about running or something here on this pod. Subscribe, give us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. Subscribe to our podcast. Goes out 5 times a week to like 150,000 people. So you might as well join in. Okay, guys, recover.
Yes.
Enjoy a few adult beverages. And then we'll get back at it. Talk to you next week.
Till next time.